What's really important here is to look at the difference between intentional and unintentional plagiarism. You probably know about what intentional plagiarism is, right? You probably recognize the bulleted items that are here. But I wonder if you recognize the unintentional plagiarism. And this is as important as if you know you're doing it. So careless paraphrasing, and what's meant by that is that you use, now keep this in mind, 4 words or more in a row from your source without quotes, with can and often does qualify as plagiarism. Even though you didn't mean to do it, it still is. If you don't document frequently enough, that can be cause for plagiarism. If you don't cite your source frequently enough in a paragraph. Another one that doesn't sound like it should be plagiarism, but it's too many quotes put right next to each other. That's a problem. Because what you're saying to the reader is, I'm nervous about plagiarism, but I don't know what this quote means. I think I know what it means, so I'm going to put it in here because it sounds good. And that doesn't work either. And then finally, and most importantly, Ms. Chesson was talking about your own writing style. It's also called your own writing voice. It's really how you write. And if you're writing a research paper and your reader reads it and says, that doesn't sound like her, or that doesn't sound like him, then you may be in for some trouble, because it might mean that you have, not realizing, taken someone else's writing or words that are just very, very close and not cited it, not quoted it. So that's very important. These are some of the problems or results that can come up, especially in English 111 on up, if your instructor finds that you have plagiarized. You can get a 0 on the assignment. Now, parent notification doesn't apply here, I don't think. But referral to administrators, suspension or dismissal from school activities, but definitely a note in your record, and that will stay there. So that's the real importance of avoiding this. So we know that using another person's words without giving them credit is plagiarism. We know that using another person's ideas without giving them credit is plagiarism. And even using another person's research results, diagrams, or images without providing citations for it. All of that can be considered plagiarism. Now we're going to take a look, and what I want you to do is to just take a look at the original source. Now you're going to really need to do some picking here, okay? Look at the original source and then look at the student paper. Look very carefully and see if you think that student's paper is plagiarized. Yeah, it is. And why is it? Excellent, excellent. More than 4, it's almost the same, isn't it, the language? And there's no citation. So a student should have used quotation marks around the words that he copied directly, and there's no parenthetical source. All right, let's try another one. By the way, here's a little detail. Never put a comma in a citation. So that's automatically wrong. Anything else wrong with this student paper? What's wrong with it? More than 4 words, good. I'm going to move through this. Okay, here's another one. What do you think? Yes? Plagiarize? No?
And nope.
Okay, let's see. Even though the writer has substituted synonyms, what happens sometimes is that when you're trying to use someone else's material, you might think, oh, I'll just use a synonym, something that is the same, and that will be okay. Well, it's not. And I'm going to tell you in one quick minute, I'm going to tell you the secret to figuring out how to avoid this. One more. I think this is the last one. Now, we'll ignore the comma in the citation this time. This time what I want you to do is to see if the writing itself looks like it's original. What do you think? Do you think this one is okay? Let's see. The student has cited the source and appropriately paraphrased the original source into his own words. There is a secret to doing this. It's not a secret really at all. It's just something that you need to learn how to do. And it's the difference between 100% chance of your plagiarizing and virtually 0% chance of your plagiarizing. When you get a paragraph that you are going to be asked to paraphrase and maybe insert a couple of quoted words in, you're going to read it once just for content. Then you're going to go back and you're going to read it again, jotting down little notes as to what information is in each sentence. It doesn't have to be a full sentence. But then you're going to take your original and flip it over. Or take your original and minimize the screen. So that now what you have are the notes that you took, and you're going to recreate that paragraph. What do you think the chances are that you will plagiarize if you do it this way? Probably 0. Because when you don't have that original work in front of your face, you are not thinking thoughts like, oh, well, I'll just move these words around a little bit and it'll be fine. I'll just put in a word or two that's similar to the words in the original, but nobody will notice. So long as I get my sight in there, that's all that matters. You won't even be thinking that, because what you'll be thinking is, okay, what's my first point? What's my second point? And you'll have it written down in key words. And then, after you've finished writing your own version and citing it, and using quotes if you've been asked to do that, then you turn over the page of the original and check yourself to see if you have done it, in other words, to see if the meaning is the same. And I can almost guarantee you that it will be 100% yours. Why? Because you're not writing what your source is writing. You're writing his ideas, but you're writing them in your own words. Does that make sense? It's an amazing difference between plagiarism, almost 100%, and plagiarism, virtually 0%. Whenever you do research, even though you are using outside sources, your essay must sound like you. And in order for it to sound like you, you're going to need to spend some extra time going over what's in the original. Okay, now I'm not going to look at it. Now what did it say? And yes, it takes longer, but you will write a good paper in terms of the way you researched it. And that is the difference. And it seems like such an easy thing, but I can guarantee you, if you wait until the last minute and you think that you can handle this, writing this paper in a couple hours, guess what's going to happen? First of all, you won't like what you did, because it will be rushed. Second of all, you will almost undoubtedly plagiarize, right? So if you practice that process, starting now, starting as soon as you start to work with any kind of documentation, you will be in much better shape. And this is a discussion that I have at the very beginning of my English 111 class. And I do practice exercises where I have students, I'll put something up on the screen and then I'll minimize it and ask them to write it in their own words and then ask them to add a couple of quoted words. So the more you practice with this, and just knowing this right now will be helpful for you. Because when you go into 111, you'll know that that will be something that you will be doing actively and will be expected of you later on. Does anybody have any questions of Ms. Chesson or of me? We probably gave you a lot to think about. Yes, sir. You always have to, good question, you always must include a works cited, whether you use one source or whether you use 5 sources. There always needs to be a works cited at the end of the paper. You do both. You do both. The in-text cite will usually include some combination of author and page number. The works cited is a detailed listing of all the information that's needed for the reader to locate your source. No, that's not okay. That's not okay. That's definitely not okay. That is a big problem. Every instructor has different ways of dealing with it. I personally, if I don't see a work cited, I take off 25 points right
So do I.
from the top.
If there's not a works cited page, you're gone. 25 points automatically because you're not giving me the details of your sources. There are lots of ways to lose points in English 111, and not being able to do in-text citation and not being able to do works cited are 2 ways to lose up to 25 points per paper.
It's a lot. And then if you don't, the other piece is, now Gail, I don't know how you do this, but if a student doesn't use in-text citing, how do you manage that?
I mark off for it, and
Yeah.
they lose up to 25 points for it. If I don't have an in-text citation that's telling me where this information came from, then it's plagiarism as far as I'm concerned. And so I don't treat it as plagiarism on the first paper, but if it occurs again, then I'll have a serious conversation with you about losing the class. because it must be done. It's simply verification. But this is what I tell my students, it's not only verification, but it implies that you know what you're doing, and therefore you can be trusted. If you're doing a correct citation, and you're making sure you're giving credit to the other people who helped you with this paper in terms of giving you information, then your credibility is built, and your teacher begins to trust your words. But if you try to pass stuff off, or you're careless or sloppy with it, then the teacher won't trust you. So it's trust building as much as anything else.
It's also giving credit to the original writer and telling your reader where this came from, because it's not your thinking. They're not your ideas. They're someone else.